I applaud us for evolving, but this is an abnormal thing. And so sometimes I look at myself, I'm going to, incriminate myself here first. Of all these different habits and things I do, I got probably a $30,000 gym like right over there. And I actually choose walking more than I choose that.
Yeah.
But sometimes I'll go in there and it's like, am I just making myself actually more unhealthy with all these specific protocols and things that I'm doing? Am I just stressing myself out in the process when I could just be, taking this path of least resistance and moving and doing it in a very natural way and not over engineering it? But it's something I think about a lot. Like, are all of us health people over engineering our practices and just revving up stress? And how important is stress and perception of stress in terms of like its effect relative to all these other things? I see so many people looking for the silver bullet of like,
Yeah.
it's our food, it's our water, it's our movement, it's our shoes, it's that we're not grounded, it's all these. And I think you can never, it's this reductionistic mindset that we have. We have this like Newtonian understanding
Yeah.
of the world, where it's like, it's our conventional medicine model. It's like, if I got a tumor, I'm just going to pull it out. You got like some sort of bacterial infection, I'm just going to like give you something to kill it. It's this very like, kind of Newtonian, like you got
Hmm.
something broken, I'm going to replace it and
One
fix it.
problem, one fix.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and I think you need to have a bit more of like holism, to understand these things.
Welcome back to Cultivating Change, everyone. I'm your host, Alex Corey. Thanks for spending some of your precious time with us. Today's guest is the founder and owner of Central Athlete in Austin, Texas. This is a fellow health entrepreneur, Jesse O'Brien. We get into the nitty gritty of metabolism, of growth mindset, of energetics, of recovery, and deep dive on nutrition and what that means to us in our journeys. Jesse has pioneered a new form of coaching, which I enjoy implementing a similar version of, that takes into account the whole individual in their health progression, where you are, and going back through your history and instilling frameworks. And as this will drop probably somewhere around the new year, habits and easy sweeping things that you can use to transform on your individual journey towards your version of better health. Towards the end of this, we get into some very fascinating, slightly controversial aspects of health and how things were handled over the last couple of years as metabolic health came to the forefront. And I absolutely love talking to someone who has as passionate a view about health and inspiring other people to take control of their health through food systems, through agriculture, through fitness, through mindset, through nutrition, all the various aspects it takes to truly grasp your health at a holistic level. I really hope you enjoy this podcast with Jesse O'Brien of Central Athlete. Thanks for doing this, Jesse. Nice to be able to download with you. You are the founder and owner of Central Athlete in Austin, Texas, correct?
Yes, sir.
That is quite the feat. Could you walk us through just an intro of how you found your own fitness journey and what made you start your own healthpreneur, your own fitness business?
Yeah. So I actually am not formally educated in health and fitness. I was just very passionate and kind of addicted to it, lifelong athlete. And so I went to business school and, graduated with a business degree, went to corporate America, was sitting in my first job doing tech sales, inside sales for a technology company here in Austin, Texas. I'd wake up every morning, sit in the shower, like, oh, I have to go in, do this thing that I'm not connected to. And then getting it at 7:45 became 8, became 8:30, became 9 o'clock. And I would sneak away. I'd make it till about 11 o'clock before I was so lethargic. I would sneak into my Jeep Grand Cherokee, recline the seats back, and I'd attempt to doze off and take a nap. And 3 months of that, I was like, this isn't a life. I'm so freaking miserable. And I'm just like constantly researching. I'm so interested in health and fitness. I was like, I'm just going to chase that. And so I started as, the proverbial bag boy in a, local fitness studio. And, to make ends meet, I played competitive tennis as a kiddo. So I strung tennis rackets. I, worked in the fitness center, and I just started slowly from there. I started studying, started formal certifications. I linked up with a mentor, a guy named James Fitzgerald, who was a Canadian. He actually won the CrossFit Games back in 2007. And he added this layer of science into being like an experimenter, and he was just like a philosopher at the same time. And I was like, this dude gets it. And he was actually like really creating some of the best and fittest athletes at the time. And that was kind of my entry into physical subculture, and it all really blossomed from there. In 2012, James linked me up with my current mentor, which is a fellow named Dr. Dixon Tom. So he owns the American Center of Biological Medicine in Scottsdale, Arizona, and he's been pioneering biological medicine. And that's been really my current fascination, and likely it'll be my legacy. Is I'm very disillusioned with the Western or conventional model of care. It's fantastic if I get into a car accident, if I need some sort of trauma care, chronic conditions, not so much. And I want to be just another person in this world who is just saying, hey, there's some other options. You don't have to give your kids antibiotics every time they get the sniffles. You don't have to give them a Tylenol every time they have, a mild fever. There are certain tools you can use. Our body has supreme intelligence to govern itself, and a healthy body is one that can reach homeostasis rather quickly and efficiently. Versus what we're seeing things like long haul COVID, which from my perspective is you're not reaching homeostasis back again or at all. And there's some sort of imbalance there with the immune system. So we actually have two companies, Central Athlete, which is this, fitness, really it's a personalized fitness experience. And then we have Central Health, which is more on the health side of things. With Central Athlete, essentially what we do is we take a very personalized viewpoint of fitness. And I built this through my experience in the fitness industry. So from 2009 through 2014, I worked, heavily in personal training and group class training. And I did like fantastic financially, but there was a lot of limitations with that model. And one of the big ones was that, it's personal, like training, right? Or group class training. The impetus is put on training. But you and me both know if you want to change your physique, like say, which is 90% of people coming to the gym, training really is such an insignificant part of the process. It seems completely malaligned. Like, yes, fitness is important, but that's good for increasing your VO2 max, like how high you can jump. Like it's going to affect like tonality of muscles. But like if you want to see like what's underneath and have a better physique, you really have to talk about nutrition. And the surface level of that is like, broccoli and chicken and macros and foods. But underneath that, it's behaviors around foods and deepest values and priorities. So you need a consultative process built into this. And that's where I think the magic is actually setting aside time, and you and the client can have the opportunity to figure out, limiting beliefs, like what are their deepest values and priorities, what their mindset is. And you can really, figure out where to go from there. And so it's a deeply intimate process. I understand health and fitness and nutritional principles and all these things. They understand their bodies, their limitations, their taste preferences, yada, 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 better than I ever will. And it's a collaboration. It's not a hierarchical model. Like, hey, chubby, like do 20 push-ups. Like, that's an antiquated model. And we need to be sitting alongside these guys, inspiring, empowering, and educating them to reach their highest potential.
If I had to sum up my entire 6-month deep dive primal health coaching course, you just did it in like 10 minutes. I hope you're enjoying the podcast, everyone. I absolutely love talking to people about health and about what helped them on their journey to find optimal health. And if you're one of those people who finds yourself tinkering with your own health and loves inspiring others and pulling the best out of others on their framework, on their journey to their own optimal health, if you've ever thought about becoming a health coach and helping others making an impact in that area, I can't recommend Primal Health Coach Institute enough. They provide the literature, the framework, the business concepts, everything you need to actually build a successful health coaching business that pulls from ancestral nutrition, fitness, all of that genetically consistent strategies that a lot of the new and emerging literature is quickly pointing towards as being able to help people reveal their genetic blueprint and work towards optimizing their own health. If health coaching is something you're interested in, always check out the links in the podcast for booking a discovery call with Primal Health Coach Institute. It's been instrumental in helping me make a successful business impacting others through health.
Like you just nailed literally from start to finish, the collaboration model, everything. And exactly what you said, I think that's what people are recognizing works, is the individualized, customized. Group classes are really good for building social connection, to making you not feel alone, because it usually, if you're, some people don't like that much attention on them at once. So the group classes give them that the camaraderie to look forward to, and gives them a good foundation. But yeah, the movement compensations, the all of the specificity of you and how you move and what you need, and all of that is lacking from that. So that's what I really liked about your approach on your website, which was that specific model where you're like, we don't do it's the best of all worlds. So it's that specific tailored approach, because you can have the best. I compare this to I'm sure you're familiar with Athlete X, Jeff Cavalier. Everyone is in personal training, or who gets into that, because he's such a big name. The model that he used, and I think still uses, is fantastic, but the programs were very cookie cutter, like the $99 a month. Basically, it's the same for everyone, which definitely can work if you're starting out. Like, you still have to get that baseline, but you're going to get a plateau at some point where you need extremely individualized things, practical daily steps that fit into your lifestyle. I've had clients that travel all over the world, and there is zero chance they are doing anything remotely similar to someone who has a desk job in the town I live in. So there is no such thing as cookie cutter fitness, like you said. What are the foundations that you like for, I guess, for that surface level nutrition, which I agree with completely? Nutrition is like 80% of everything. What are the foundation? What do you ask people whenever they first come to you about nutrition?
Yeah. So, we have kind of in our coaches' brains, we always have frameworks and models and things that we're trying to assess with clients. So we have a very comprehensive intake form. Part of that process, they're also logging food, water, and sleep. And, we're saying we're not trying to change everything all at once. We just want to observe behaviors. And I think there are some really critical things. And, I would say there's four kind of primary things for what I would consider like it's nutrition somewhat. You'll love the first one is water, or hydration. So I'm preaching to the choir right there, and I'm upgrading my own knowledge and understanding with Alex. He's helping me with, finding the best water here in Austin, Texas, and how I can put a great system together. So I find that, and we assess this too. So part of our assessment process is we have a bioelectrical impedance machine, and we're able to see how much water, compare that to the amount of body weight they have. And we have certain benchmarks where we want females, males, roughly 58 to 62% water on this piece of machinery, about 52 to 55% for females. And we find so many people are chronically dehydrated. And it's rather, simple thing to grasp. Most people don't drink enough water. Like, I've got a guy who was 285 pounds. Like, you got to be drinking a pretty good amount of water to hydrate that type of guy. And he was drinking, he said, maybe 30, 40 ounces of water. There's coffee, there's teas, there's all these other things. And to what degree is that actually hydrating? So hydration is really one of the first things that we're looking for. And these are in no specific order. The next one would be awareness / emotions. So, a lot of people, I say, hey, create a food log for me. They're like, they'll put it into MyFitnessPal, and I get, the biggest mistake I get is this: they just export like all these macros and numbers, and it's devoid of actually the foods that are in there. I'm like, this does nothing for me. Like, I want to know when you ate, like how many times per day you ate, and more of what I'm trying to understand is like, what are the behaviors around food? Is this person eating 3 square meals per day? Is this person constantly grazing kind of throughout their day? Do they eat like kind of a mouse for 3 days and then they gorge on day 4? Do they eat like a mouse, skipping breakfast, so they have a tiny, lunch, a bigger snack, and then they eat this massive meal and then they have no appetite in the morning? All these things give me insight into their lifestyle, their schedule, their priorities. And I'm also looking for an understanding of like what filter are they using?
Yeah.
Taste, convenience, or health. And it's, they use it for different circumstances, but there's a lot of, like myself included, a lot of us are gravitating towards convenience. We run businesses, we've got kids, we've got all the things. But I'm also trying to find ways to make that mutually inclusive with it being a health component as well to that food. So, and aside with that, a lot of times I'll have people log if I suspect there's some emotions tied to food, and it can go 2 ways. Like I'm super stressed and just appetite is zapped due to, a cortisol response. Or there's a lot of soothing and comforting, right? Which typically is modeled earlier in life. My mom never gave me the comfort that I needed. So I was able to get that through food. And so you see these things, right? We seek the familiar, right? So this familiar environment from 0 to 18, I'm just replicating this on and on and on. And now because I'm not as active anymore and I'm gravitating towards whatever I want to eat and booze, well, now I've added 40 pounds and I'm no longer happy with it. And I'm hiring somebody like Jesse to help me. Yeah. So water, emotions / awareness is number 2. Third would be food quality. Mm-hmm. So, this can, I have to define this because food quality means very different things to very different people.
Yes.
Food quality from like a standard American diet could be like eating maybe more of a low fat stick. If you're a vegan, right, it's going to be plant-based. Carnivore, it could be grass-fed carnivore. Yeah. Like we have to define what that is. And,
exactly.
and my definition.
I'm glad you brought that up. Yep. Yeah. What's yours?
Yeah. It would be, eating what our like great grandparents ate, something of that, eating, close to the ground, mm-hmm. So an apple has how many ingredients? 1. Piece of chicken has how many ingredients? 1. That's, it's a spectrum. That would be a higher quality food. And of course you can keep going that, that road, like where was the chicken raised? Was it raised in a conventional farm, or was it raised like a happy chicken roaming the earth, eating bugs and all the things?
Yeah.
So I try to, have some color to that. And then the final piece would be protein. I believe that protein is a kind of a critical macronutrient, and we've been eating less of it as a society. As we age due to impaired digestive function, we actually need to be eating more. One of the the number one cause for 65-year-olds dying from injuries, actually fall related accidents. And so, if we trip and fall, we don't have good bone mineral density, or we don't have the strength to catch our fall. I just see so many people under eating protein, and just people under eat protein. And then as you get older, you need more. I just never see people. That's the biggest trap people fall into. And then if you're a plant-based person, well, you need even more due to low bioavailability of those proteins and complete amino acid profiles and blah, blah, blah. So those would be kind of like my critical 4, like emotions, protein, hydration, and then food quality. Those are the big things I'm looking for. 90% of people live there and never need to go up my theoretical model in my head.
Yeah. And I'm glad you put emotion so far up that list. Their entire coaching programs, some of the people I did my certification with that specialize just in that, because it is such a massive issue, where this is why I like the water so much. The same conditioning doesn't usually exist around the water. No one has that baggage from childhood that they bring into it. But the food, like you said, is tied. There's so many things wrapped around it that it's not just do this, which is why calories in, calories out is such a simplistic model. It's because you're not even scratching the surface at the amount of decades of, I won't say micro trauma, but yeah, food is what people can usually control. So that's what they have used to regulate their hormones and mood throughout their life, instead of the other things that are available to regulate your hormones and mood. So I really appreciate you saying. How hard have you found, how much time do you usually spend on that aspect of it with people, trying to get them to recognize even that they're doing that, that there is an emotional component of it, and they may not be in as much control as they think they are.
Yeah, I mean, as long as it's needed for them to gain that awareness, and it's not every single
Right.
person, that has this issue, but I see it more and more, and they have to be, all I'm doing is I'm inviting them to recognize it themselves. I'm kind of like teeing it up and kind of helping support this level of awareness. But it's enough time and conversations, for them to kind of get to that point. For me, it takes, roughly about 6 sessions with an individual, before I really have like a pretty strong understanding of how the person's ticking, their history, what needs to be done, to get past this current health or kind of fitness challenge that they're having. But you have some people that are like more gung ho, and can just make these changes quickly, and people who like need, time. And I'm talking about, years to really make meaningful changes that are consistently implemented, and they can do so in very good cyclical patterns.
Right. I mean, if it took decades to build all of that, I now call them tension patterns, because I've worked with enough bodywork people where it's the same thing in the neurology. It's just basically neurological tension patterns that have been built, and it takes, even if you go a fraction of the time, if it took 2 decades to build it, it's going to take probably longer than 2 weeks to start to unravel it. So yeah, it can take a very, very long time, but it's so, for me at least, it was freeing. That was the only word, where once you recognize that exists, and you're like, oh, interesting, and that gives you something to watch. And the thing that I really liked at the beginning of this was, you said experimentation and philosophy, which your mentor was instilling. Those are the most fascinating people to learn from. Is it's not just doing the work, as in it's not all purely physical and not all knowing just about muscle fibers and all of the different biochemical components, but it is the willingness and curiosity of how your own body works and responds, and then the philosophy, which provides the inspiration, the mindset, all the other things that you're going to run into whenever you hit a brick wall. I think those are understated in transformation. Just the how you're thinking about it, and thinking about it long term, and that it is all a game, and learning how you work. What did your mentor, or what did you learn about that? What did he like to talk about with experimentation and his philosophy?
I think what I came to realize is that it's this never-ending journey between theory and application. And I see a lot of practitioners get stuck in certain fields. For example, like let's play up the example of the jock who always is stuck in application. And he knows a lot about his body and the way of doing things, but he'll probably never have a complete understanding because he hasn't learned the backbone of, say, health and fitness principles. And then conversely, the person who's stuck in academia who knows all these things doesn't truly know them because he's never actually implemented, and the difficulty of stacking these things on top of each other. And so it is, I believe there should be, James often talked about, seasons of learning, seasons where I'm more philosophical or I'm more invested in kind of the cerebral aspect of things. And then there's more of these seasons of doing, like maybe more summer months where I'm outside and like practicing these things. But it's this continual journey where I'm cycling between these journeys, and then it becomes the snake eating its tail, and it's this endless thing that just never ends. And it's this kind of spiraling motion that is moving towards mastery, which never happens. And you have to fall in love with that process. And I can say that like the deeper I've gotten into that, it's just more infinitely complex and curious and interesting, and I dig the whole thing. And so he spoke to something that I inherently like knew and felt. So I really appreciated that. And then lastly, like the consumers, they snuff out the people who don't do both of those things real quick. Think about the fat PE coach who's blowing the whistle as you're running the mile. You're like, screw her, she's never run a mile in her life. right? Well, the fat lipidologist, right? Who's had 2 bypass surgeries. Like, you get where I'm going with this.
Oh yeah.
We don't trust those people. So you, in order to be a great practitioner, you have to become the healthiest version of yourself. You have to become the fittest version of yourself. Like, whatever your specialty is, you have to become that.
Yes. And I think that's why the people who are very popular on social media, who should be, are sort of leading the self-experimentation wave in nutrition, in philosophy, and fitness. So these are on the carnivore side. You got Paul Saladino and Sean Baker and all the people who are just actually doing the work themselves. Whether or not you agree with their principles, they are proving it themselves because they are putting themselves through the rigorous tests, putting out blood work. Like, it is inspirational to just watch them, because they may shift their opinions as they look at where they hit roadblocks. Like Saladino changed quickly because he was the carnivore MD. That's how he made a name for himself. And I have his book, and he was the one who kind of reframed my paradigm on antioxidants, not our endogenous antioxidants, but like plant pigments. And it made me just think about him an entirely different way. But he even changed his like within 6 months, because he was experimenting on himself, where the philosophy and the principles and the science takes you to a point until your body tells you to branch and do something else.
Mm-hmm.
And same on the plant-based side, is there, like Rich Roll, an equal amount of people who are putting their philosophy and what they have found to the test, with just putting their bodies under constant amount of stress tests. And that's why people believe them, is because you can see them stress testing themselves. Goggins, like any of those people who just kind of make you be like, oh, I didn't know that was possible. The most interesting thing for me was when carnivore started happening, not because ethically or anything. I've been vegan and vegetarian, but mostly because the nutritional side of it was ingrained for so long. Like, you need glucose to run optimally, and they're like, nope.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And people are just like, okay, are we talking dosage? And they're like, nope, not at all. So just like blew that out of the water. Like, you can live for 20 years just eating ribeye. Not saying that you should. I'm saying you can, and your body will function just fine, and you can break world records in deadlifting and rowing. Just that someone did it. So it's kind of like the 4-minute mile in a marathon. You're like, I didn't know that was possible. And now the framework around everything has changed. That's what I love about the space that we're in now, is people are breaking paradigms like left and right, because the information is so easy to get out. Getting back to,
well, I want to touch on that one point,
sure,
because I think it's a really interesting thing, because this pulls up, like, nutritional wisdom is so dogmatic, and we get stuck in camps and stuff like that. But this is just from my understanding, it's kind of like, we haven't been talking about like nutrition, like,
right.
It's more of a recent phenomenon, but like, we've been practicing these things for so long. You have like the Inuits who, are Native Americans, and they're eating pretty much a carnivorous diet. The only plant matter they would eat would be small lichens grown between rocks in the summer months. And so, whale blubber and seals and fish, and, a very high fat, kind of moderate protein type stick. And then you have, people like the Hadza who are eating some root vegetables and some honey and things of that nature. And so, what we should realize is that human beings are highly adaptive species. We can be foragers, and we can eat all plant matters, and we can survive, and we can eat, all meat based, or we can do something in between. And we can actually eat a standard American diet and do pretty darn well till males are about 50 years old, females are about 40. And then, chronic disease, starts rearing its head at that point. And it's been building for decades prior to that, but we're incredibly resilient. And so I think one thing that more people in the fitness industry and nutritional industry could do is adopting more of an agnostic perspective and zooming outside of these things and saying, okay, I want to understand, why is this carnivore thing kind of working? What are some of the limitations? Like, the interesting thing about Saladino is that he started as a vegan, and then he moved into a keto guy, and then he got into carnivore. And through each of these experiences, his approaches evolved. His approach with keto evolved because he's like, well, actually, I do a little bit better with some sugar, so I don't like start cramping and stuff at night. And he was, having electrolyte issues because his insulin was so low, and he's having a hard time balancing, sodium and potassium and things of that nature. So he's kind of kept evolving, but we have been doing that in a very intuitive and geographically dependent way
Right.
for very long periods of time.
Yeah, exactly. And it is highly person specific. And this is where most people have their eyes glaze over, because there's so much nuance. And what works for someone doesn't work for everyone because of your microbiome, because of certain genetic preferences, because of. There's so many different variables. And what I love is when people hit like a very practical tool like intermittent fasting, and it just like crosses all of the boundaries, where you're just like, you can do this regardless of what you're eating, and it has the same self-healing property, things like that cross all of the different dogmatic boundaries. I absolutely love. So it's where the biohacking community comes in, where they're like, we don't really care, like this works regardless of what you're eating. You can, and all the biohackers try to get the like 5 or 10% out of it. You're like, how do I maximize my upregulation of fat burning genes? So I do fasted cardio follow, or hit workout in the morning, and then wait for maximum testosterone, and then do, like, you can get real in the weeds with it.
Mm-hmm.
But the big tools are what I love talking to people out, because there's not a huge barrier to that. It's like, if I didn't have any of this knowledge, if I don't have the time to pay attention to the literature, what would I do? And you're like, well, like you said earlier, frequency, timing, those are the two big ones that are being studied right now. But yeah, I haven't found anyone that works well long term with grazing, which, I mean, I used to do that, and the mood swings and the energy swings are, I guess that's how you tell. People ask, how do you tell if your diet's working? It's like, what happens if you don't eat for 5 hours? Does your personality change? That's probably not the best thing. But what have you found to be the big movers, like those huge practical tools, regardless of looking at someone's specific food logs, where, if a friend who isn't totally invested in nutrition or fitness, if they're just chatting with you, what will you just like throw at them to play with?
From a nutritional perspective?
Nutrition or fitness, those big ones where you're just like, try this for a month and see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, the big movers aren't sexy, and it's
I know.
things that everybody knows. Uh, for males, it's eating about, 2 palms of protein in each meal, protein dense foods. Females is about one palm sized portion. And like every meal or snack, I'm talking about like for 10 years straight, like never skipping that. Most people under consume protein, the benefits with satiation,
Mm.
the benefits with like just repairing you at the cellular level. It's going to increase your metabolism through an increased thermic effect of food. Like there's so many benefits there. It's going to impact the musculoskeletal
Yeah.
system. And people tend to, like if we look at, why we've likely gained, weight as a society since like 1970, it's we've overconsumed food, right? But it's not as simple as calories in, calories out. And I think a lot of it is because, well, we've been consuming way more ultra processed food. So what if we started to prioritize the macronutrient that has the most satiation, right? And so instead of me saying, hey, I want you guys to avoid ultra processed foods and all the good stuff, I want to say, hey, focus on eating this as much as possible, and hopefully it actually diminishes, what we're eating on this side over there. And so that's probably the one thing, and I think, that would work for 90% of people and 90% of outcomes, you know, and reach probably like a 90% effect with most people. Like, I don't think most people need to do that much. Just get really good with that. And the other one is like even less sexy. Here people are trying to sell like 4-week, get shredded programs and, 6-week boot camp type things. And I'm trying to sell people like, hey, I'm the last, fitness professional you're ever going to work with me. Let me teach you how to do some things for like 3 to 10 years, which is scary, but I'm going to teach you real consistency. And, like you're consistent when I say this all the time, you're consistent when your life is like normal and not chaotic. And then you travel to Boston for the weekend. Your kids come in town for 3 weeks. The holidays. It temperature dropped 30 degrees. Like there's always something, right? And boom, people's, their habits, which aren't really habits if they're that flimsy, they leave. And so I try to teach people, a mindset of, always something versus all or nothing, because all or nothing typically turns into a nothing plan, which is what so many people do. People have the best aspirations. Like, I'm going to wake up early and see morning sunlight. I'm going to get some good water, and I'm going to, one thing happens, right? The kid's like freaking out, and then it cuts into that thing. And then it's like, I'll just start tomorrow. And so there's a lot of like things that can be done from a behavioral psychological level that can really help people get on track with that. And so it's working with people in tandem. That's why the consultative, like, coaching aspect is so important. And I think these things need to be done at the grassroots level, is to teach people what true consistency means. And I'm not talking about a day or a week or a month or even a year. I'm talking about decades of great movement practices, which will evolve over time. Me and my teens, my training looked different than when I was in 20s. And now that I've got, 2.5 kids, my training looks different than it did before. I have the nervous system of a 36-year-old. I have a GI system of a 36-year-old. I've got probably, 950,000, pull-ups on my body. I got probably like 500,000 back squats on my body. Like, my body has some wear and tear on it and stuff. So I have to take those things into consideration. And I do think you need somebody to help teach you some of these things. But ultimately, the best thing that I can teach anybody is autonomy, to get them to a state that you and I are in, where they accept responsibility for building a lifestyle around these things and living an intentional life.
Yeah, that's the goal, right? To give someone full responsibility, tools over their own body, full autonomy, and to make them continually interested in digging in themselves. That is where the gold is found. And I had one of my clients that just ended one of my issues, said something really nice at the end. And this was the same massive traveler. And basically the only thing that he could get solidified, that he had control over all the time, regardless of where he was his feeding schedule. He just excelled with intermittent fasting. He was a pretty stocky, burly guy, loved doing HIIT workouts in the morning, but really liked the modulation effect of intermittent fasting. He's like, if I want to have a better workout, I add some carbs before it, or I have more in the evening. But he really liked the ability to control his energy levels and weight and cognition just with that. Like, if he learns nothing else, like, I have a full hormone education program, but that's a lot for people who have lives. But if you can just take away from something that you can modulate all of those things, energy, hunger, mood, drive, with a schedule, like, you have complete control over that almost all the time, depending on your choices. So I love those things like that. The autonomy is massive. Letting people find something that they have complete control over, with family life, with everything. What have you found for yourself that has been your rock in fitness, that your non-negotiables?
Yeah. This is a transgenerational movement practice that my mom passed on to me, and her mom passed on from her, and it's walking. It's, again, so simple.
I saw on your website the shirts. Thank you for saying that.
Make walking cool, and it's this kind of, cheesy slogan that just means, like, this is kind of our core responsibility. There's no, like, psychological barrier. Like, if I'm going to do a HIIT workout or a run, I'm like, oh, I gotta kind of, like, gear up for that mentally. I don't got to do any of that for, walking. Just shoes on, or actually, you don't even need shoes. I wore actually no shoes for an entire month. I was in Hawaii, got back 2 weeks ago. You don't even need shoes. So just get outside and you just move, right? And it's so much better than nothing at all. And like, I've been, walking, the best teacher of walking was actually my dog. Like, once you walk them for a couple of weeks, then it's ingrained in them every day, in the morning and in the evening. And now it's like Pavlov's law. They're like, hey, we got to get this thing going. And I realized that the benefits were actually less physical than they were mental, because so much of our days, I'm doing this, I'm on my phone, kids, like, I'm doing. but when is my brain getting stuck in this natural default state, which is just my brain's wandering, and it's like thinking, and man, I sort out a lot of stuff. You know, people talk a lot about journaling, and I feel like it's kind of like it has a lot of similar mechanisms of just you're working some things out, and maybe I could build up upon that and maybe journal after my walks
Yeah.
or something. But it's a powerful thing. I mean, you're moving blood, you're moving lymph, you're getting sunlight. You know, it's fresh air theoretically, or fresher than
Theoretically.
inside.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it's the best thing that we can do for our bodies. I actually believe that people shouldn't mess with like guys like me. They shouldn't get gym memberships until they get extremely good at walking. I would say, you know, 7,000 to 10,000 steps
Yeah.
every single day for a year. You get good at that and build some personal responsibility and some autonomy there, right? And you need some help, like, you know, me or Alex are your guys to talk to at that point, or maybe get a gym membership or something. But don't waste your money on a gym membership. You're just putting something else in front of you.
Right.
Typically speaking, yeah, I know there's communities and it can be engaging and you get away from the house and things, but you know, walking is so easy and it's democratic. Everybody can do it. There's no privilege, you know,
Right.
there's no politics involved. So
Yeah, zero barrier to entry, like you mentioned. And I often forget this. So I will have half hour and I don't necessarily have the drive or the energy. Even like I have resistance bands right behind me. And even then, if I'm fatigued from the prior day, all of that takes a certain amount of mental work. And then eventually be like, wait a minute, stop making excuses. I'll literally put my shoes on and then there's a park right around my house. Even if it's 5 or 10 minutes, like you said, the amount of energy you get just from that low level movement. And then I remember all the epigenetic factors, like, right, sunlight, everything that's turning on when you're in that really low, calm, steady state where, you know, if you can go for a hike or anything, all of you're upregulating fat metabolism because of the zone you're in. Hopefully the sun shines out, like you mentioned. So it feels better. Creativity goes up. You're still putting weight on your bones. So your bone strength still goes up. Like it's the thing that will stick with you and can stick with you regardless of where you are, regardless of how old you are, especially for what you mentioned earlier, where we all know someone that age, probably over 70, where you hear that they fell, well, it's usually 80s, and broke a hip, and then it just cascaded, like went downhill real fast. So that is a massive thing you can do for prevention. Go with someone, go with a dog. You can get as scientific as you want with it, but yeah, a lot of the literature is 6,000 plus steps is like prevention for almost all of the chronic diseases because it turns everything on. You're not like making new proteins like you would with like an intense HIIT workout, but you're turning like 80% of your recovery genes on, which is what you want for zero basic effort. I don't know anyone that felt worse after a walk. It's one of those things where you're like,
doesn't happen.
Always feel better, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're
and this is the most primordial form of movement that we've ever had. You know, we did sprint, yes, we did lift heavy things, yes, we did climb, but the bare brunt of what we did was we were just walking, right? With community, to get water, to gather things, to build things. Like it was just this medium in which we did a lot of it. And we have to remind ourselves that working out in physical subculture is a rather modern advent. It's a new thing that we created to replace what we no longer have, which is we don't have a hunter-gatherer society anymore. And so like I applaud us for evolving, but this is an abnormal thing. And so sometimes I look at myself, I'm going to, incriminate myself here first. Of all these different habits and things I do, I got probably a $30,000 gym like right over there. And I actually choose walking more than I choose that. But sometimes I'll go in there and it's like, am I just making myself actually more unhealthy with all these specific protocols and things that I'm doing? Am I just stressing myself out in the process when I could just be, taking this path of least resistance and moving and doing it in a very natural way and not over engineering it? But it's something I think about a lot. Like, are all of us health people over engineering our practices and just revving up stress? And how important is stress and perception of stress in terms of like its effect relative to all these other things? Like, I don't think we'll ever truly know like the effects of all these things in comparison to each other and the interdependency of all of those different things and habits. And it's something that I question myself a lot is, can I just make myself more healthy by, focusing on less things and just like kind of relaxing a bit more?
That brings up a key point. What have you found that you tell clients or just in general for quickly returning to homeostasis? So for balancing the other side of those stress responses, potential adrenal fatigue from too much fitness or working out or just beating your body down, have you personally found something that is a really good rebalancer other than walking? Because walking works really well too, but any specific practices?
Yeah, I mean, there's something that can, instantaneously lower your heart rate. It can start to drop stress hormones. Pupils will contract, and that's a deep breath. And we all have access to it, and it's simple. And many people don't know how to breathe properly. And I think you don't need to do anything specifically other than just consciously breathe. I think if you want to be a bit more parasympathetic and teach people how to relax, you'll have a strategy that focuses on the exhalation portion. But just conscious breathing in some way, shape, or form. And we've been talking about this for thousands of years. Like, this is ancient wisdom, and we know there's benefits. And so it's like teaching people to breathe. And sometimes I'll engineer it for a while and say, hey, for the next 6 months, I want you to count 100 conscious breaths every single day. And if somebody does that, which most people don't, but if somebody does that, they realize a really important thing, right? In month 7, when they get triggered, they automatically go to, and they learn how to regulate that nervous system instantaneously. It's a beautiful thing. And so that we have to be conscious before we become unconscious. And so we can actually start to shift the nervous system into a bit of a more balanced nervous system. We should have roughly a 60-40 balance between our sympathetic nervous system and our parasympathetic nervous system. And I would make, I don't know the statistics on this, but I would say we're so heavily, stuck towards sympathetic drive, 90-10, 95-5. If we can do anything that can that can encourage parasympathetic tone, I think we're doing that person just a massive favor.
Yeah, my most recent podcast was with the new knee pain guru. He lives 10 minutes away from me. He's an orthobionomist, and exactly what you said, which is most people, including myself, and this one hurt a little bit whenever he was talking to me. He didn't know any of my situation, but he basically spoke right at me. He's like, most people are addicted to a sympathetic nervous system response where you just get really used to the adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisol, just that response to the point where it feels normal. So if you're not humming with cortisol and you don't feel like you're firing, especially if you have a fairly type A personality, which is where I am, and that one hurt a little bit. So I've been purposefully trying to make myself not, doesn't matter not what, just something mellower. So I've been starting to do more Tai Chi and more Qigong, because you have to move slowly and you cannot be caffeinated when you do that, because you won't move slowly. Like, you'll feel your body be asynchronous. It's real easy to pick up, and it also makes you do the breath work. And it was so weird to me. I'm glad this happened, but from what I can tell, I think breath work started becoming cool again with Wim Hof. And I don't know why it took that extreme of an example for people to be like, oh yeah, you can control almost everything with breath. And now there's all the different forms, and the Vedic practices picked up with that, because all the practices, all the ancient cultures knew this. They all focused on breath, and that because it's the divine force. Like, it's the thing you can use to control almost all parts of your autonomic nervous system. Like, everything, control with breath. So I'm glad it happened, but it's always weird to see what has to happen in the zeitgeist for a renewed interest in something. Like, I've also been binging Shi Heng Yi, which is a Shaolin master out of Europe. And again, like, I knew everything he was saying, but you always need someone who has mastered the skills that you're like, yep, that's exactly where I'm going, to have that renewed sense of, this is why I was doing all the things that I cared about. Like, when I learned to farm 10 years ago, I still fall off the track of growing food because you get used to just going to the grocery store every day. And then it takes an inspirational message from Jim Gale or someone in the permaculture world to hit and be like, right, that's why I went down that path. And it renews and reinvigorates your lust for, more resilience, taking control over some aspect of your life, breath work, growing your own food, personal fitness, mindset, growth, any of that, or recovery and balance, which is where I need to this year. This is my New Year's, is I don't have a problem beating myself down. So this year is going to be the year of balance, because I am so bad at adrenal fatigue. Like 3 weeks maybe until I run myself into the ground if I don't stay conscious of it. So thanks for reminding me of that.
Yeah. Alex, what do you do for fun that's not related to health and fitness?
Tennis. So you got a fellow tennis guy here. I never restrung rackets because that sounds horribly tedious, but I love tennis.
You get fast.
I'm sure you do. Yeah. Archery and mountain biking and running, but running turns into a competitive thing too quick now, as you can imagine. Like I ran cross country, so it's easy for me to overdo that. So mountain biking is pure fun. So I enjoy the flow state of mountain biking and gardening, although gardening also turned into a business. So there's very few hobbies left that didn't turn into businesses. And those are the ones you have to cherish and keep as pure fun. So mountain biking and tennis are the pure fun right now, and archery.
Yeah. I think that's a great way for you to incorporate, some of the things that you probably need the most of is, how do you create some sort of rhythm and routine around that, or some sort of community that draws you into those experiences. But those things I find naturally are great balancing acts for the nervous system. You reminded me of something. You don't know, you're in North Carolina, is that right?
I am. Western North Carolina. Yep.
I can't say this word, but Verena or Verena, is that like a city? It's like some suburb of, anyway,
can you spell it?
Fuquayvarina. I'm trying to see where it's located because I have a friend
I don't know that.
You should, let's see, it is by it's by Raleigh. So this is a
That's
suburb
Eastern
of
Carolina.
Raleigh. Got it. Okay.
But it's not that
so
far.
I have a friend who's quite an interesting guy, and I met him. I'm not a sports guy really, but I met him at a UT tailgate through another friend, and I was wearing the perfect toes, like toe spacers, and I done a lot of stuff with kind of barefoot stuff.
Yeah.
And this guy was like, oh my gosh. And he told me his whole kind of world. And he is an archer, and he trained in the Olympic Training Center in Colorado. And he had all sorts of back issues and hip issues and stuff. And he said until he started working on his feet, none of that stuff would get better. All the rehab stuff. And he started working on his feet, and things all came alive, and his archery got better. He's a really, really, really interesting guy. I'll have to link you up with, his name's Tyler Benner. He's just a fascinating, the archery, the barefoot, and he's just he does, I don't know if you know Katie Bowman, who does a lot of, she's a biomechanist, in the Northwest. And she does a lot of stuff with furniture-free homes, of learning to incorporate movement into your lifestyle. So Move Your DNA is a fantastic book for you or any of your listeners right now. But Tyler, he has a company that also is kind of furniture for furniture-free homes. But there's a lot of synchronicity between you and Tyler. And I thought about him 3 times. I was like, I got to tell you about Tyler. He's a very eclectic dude, but man, you guys could talk up a storm.
Yeah, I like eclectic dudes. And on the barefoot train, 100%. So I ran cross country and had plantar fasciitis when I was 17. I was wearing massive honking knee braces, couldn't do anything, tennis or cross country. This is when I was 17. That's still the peak of your youth. And I was like, this isn't right. So I stopped running through college. And then I think it was Born to Run. I was like, okay, I'll bite. I'll try your toe fingers shoes. And yep, that was real fast. And now I haven't turned, you don't go back usually whenever you've discovered that you can run pain-free. I think that The thing that made me actually realize it was possible was I was in Hawaii. I was learning to farm. We were on a very clay dirt road. I think we were 24, so I was probably, I think, drinking wine at the time. And I was like, I'm just gonna give some on my backpack, take off my shoes, and just run back. And I didn't know how far it was, but it was probably like 2 miles or something. And I hadn't run at this point, and I just ran. And running when you're slightly intoxicated is probably one of the best feelings anyway you can have, because you're numb anyway. But I had zero knee or heel pain, and whenever I like became sober again, I was like, wait a minute, I shouldn't be able to run for 2 miles with no pain barefoot. So never went back after that. So I do Genesis, zero shoes Genesis, like thong sandals in the summer. It's basically just, like the Tarahumara Indians, just padding. It's like strapping a piece of tire on your feet. And that makes running fun. I would do barefoot if there weren't so many locust trees in North Carolina. They've needles this big.
Oh God.
It's not a good time. It's like the beaches of Hawaii. They have some nice thorns on them too. But whenever I can, barefoot running makes you realize that we aren't taught to run correctly. Like our gait is super off. Like you are forced to, if you have no padding on your heel, you run differently. Like immediately. No one has to tell you how to do it, but you're like, unless I want a shooting shockwave through my knee, I'm going to run differently, which is the way that you should run anyway. So that changed everything as well. I just do zero drop everything at this point. Thanks for mentioning that.
And then when you think about it, even if we don't run, just walking, I mean, you get this I don't know, couple degree kind of like push, with our whole body starts leaning forward. And then so then the hips, kind of anterior tilt a little bit, and then the back kind of comes into extension. So it changes kind of like our posture, neck might come forward a little bit. And then, when has like 95% of the world, had this, 3-inch pad of rubber between us and the earth? It's actually like all these small things, I think, really just like add up. I don't think it's, and this is maybe just one last point that I have, is I see so many people looking for the silver bullet of like, it's our food, it's our water, it's our movement, it's our shoes, it's that we're not grounded, it's all these. And I think it's it's this reductionistic mindset that we have. We have this like Newtonian understanding of the world, where it's like, it's our conventional medicine model. It's like, if I got a tumor, I'm just going to pull it out. You got like some sort of bacterial infection, I'm just going to like give you something to kill it. It's this very like, kind of Newtonian, like you got something broken, I'm going to replace it and fix it.
One problem, one fix.
And I think you need to have a bit more of like holism, to understand these things. It's like the summation of all of these things. Like nobody's grounded anymore. Nobody's eating good foods anymore. We're not socially connected. Nobody has, ask people if you have 5 or more close friends that they can confide in. That's part of our intake form. Dude, people don't have freaking friends. Like, how bad is that? Like, it's horrible. Like, I mean, literally the majority of people, like over 50%, say that they don't have 5 or more friends and, that they can confide in. And maybe it's a biased pool of people I'm pulling from. Nevertheless, like it's a summation of all these things. No sunlight, deficient mineral and vitamin status in the body. You add up all these things, you give it time. And then now you have like, and it's being proven in science now, but you have these transgenerational things that are being passed down from generation to generation. If you look at the Pottinger cat studies, that's a really, really fascinating study. And I forget when it was, but I think it was like the 1950s. And, what they did is, cats, another side interesting story. Cats are carnivorous by trade or whatever. Type in vegan cat. It's a fun little experiment on Instagram. All these poor sickly cats. And so what they did is they took these cats who were carnivorous and they started feeding them, dry kibble. And within 4 generations, they became infertile. Really, really interesting. They couldn't reproduce anymore. And then it took another 4 generations for them to be able to like essentially regain their health. So a total of 8 generations. Wow. And so like how much have we, and how many different respects have we done that with like, put my tinfoil hat on, but with like vaccinations, with food, with like GMOs, with glyphosate, like all these different things. And so how many like, or, it's almost like bioaccumulation with like, like tuna and stuff like that. Are we like transgenerationally like bioaccumulating all of these like traumas and toxins and just like different genetic assaults.
Yeah.
And so I think it's the holism of that big picture. And that's like part of the reason why I think we're just, 88% of us are metabolically unhealthy in the United States, according to a UNC study. I mean, that's freaking, why is more people aren't talking about that? That's like horrible, man.
Yeah.
Really, really bad that like people like you and me are the minorities. Like, I don't know. I could go on.
Oh no, I know, and I could too. That I have to, whenever I'm out in public, I have to stop myself from ranting almost every time, because, like you were saying earlier, there are some really easy big ones that you can do, and we didn't touch at all on supplement stacks. But I'm gonna probably end up doing another one of these with you, because there's a lot of stuff we go over. What do you think is the most easy mineral deficiency, or deficiency in general, that people can take care of? What do you think that we're not getting from food at all? And I know what I think, because I farm, but I'm curious what you've seen.
I'd say magnesium.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
What were you thinking?
That one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Magnesium, I think. I mean, some people say it's like 300 enzymic reactions.
Yeah.
I think it's probably closer to like 700, and we probably will never truly know the amount of like critical processes. But one thing on that is everybody has this Costco mentality. Like, oh, this one says it's got 100 milligrams
Right.
of magnesium. This one says it's got 500. Well, this one's got a gram, and none of that actually matters at all, right? It's what gets into the cell that actually matters. And so
Bioavailability.
I actually do a lot of things with like, things that have like ionic amounts, like very sub trace amounts, but there's certain things that helps it get in and stay into the cell. And so that's actually what matters. And there's a lot of different tests that can quantify these types of things, like a SpectraCell test, or like a Genova NutriVal, or some of the things that can quantify these types of things. But yeah, and so that would be my wisdom. It's a bit technical for most people, but don't just like load up with the like taking 5 different magnesium oxide pills,
Right.
and just getting diarrhea for the next week and saying magnesium doesn't work for you.
Yep. I always link people. That's a great point. I always link people to Thomas DeLauer's video. It was the nine major types of magnesium, and it's one of those another annoying ones where it's so nuanced. Different systems, bioreactions, different reactions need different forms of them, which is why glycinate usually is used for sleep and mood, because it crosses the blood-brain barrier, things like that. So I always go for food first, but it's actually difficult to put magnesium back into the ground in sufficient quantities. So even like the tests that were done for nutrients in food aren't new. Like none of these are revamped. They don't continually test what the foods are coming up with. Like these were all done in the 70s and 80s. And they're like, a small avocado has this much. And you're just like, you didn't do that test last year. And so the deficiency or the content from like an organic farm is going to be way different than a conventional farm, probably way different than a biodynamic farm. Like it is absurdly complex if you go down to that level. So I think, I'm with you. I think most people would benefit from making sure they're getting adequate magnesium in different forms, but prioritizing food. What do you like for the omegas debate is interesting. Do you usually tell people about omega-3, omega-6, or is that too nuanced for the big ones?
No, I think it's what there's a couple core vitamins, minerals, supplements that I think are things that we've had in our bodies and systems for long periods of time. Minerals, B vitamins, essential fatty acids, which isn't just fish. It's you can also get stuff from seeds and things of that nature. Probiotics, I think, is probably, if I gave somebody one supplement, I'd give them a probiotic 1 year pre-conception, so before they're even born, all the way to the day that they die. I think it's that intrinsically tied to their health and GI system and immune system. And I would definitely put fish oil on there. I mean, we grew up, 90% of us, developed around maritime regions. And so, like a baby's brain is like 90% like DHA. And so, that's like one of the, for our kids, the day they're born, they're getting DHA drops in their brain. And it is just such important research. They were realizing that babies that were breastfed were on average, like depending on the studies, 5 to 10 IQ points more intelligent than your formula fed babies. And this actually was such groundbreaking research that the formula manufacturers caught wind of this, and now they start fortifying the formula with fatty acids. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I mean, some people, say like I've heard like debates on it being like a PUFA, and it can lead to like oxidation. And there's just such an overwhelming amount of like research from all sorts of different like cardiovascular benefits, cognitive benefits. Like I just see like such a massive argument that we need to be eating a pretty good amount of this. And some people, or a lot of people, I think, are in just such deficiency that you should be doing it for like long periods of time, meaning years, with a not over the counter brand, but like a medical grade brand that has high degrees of certifications, and it's got to be within 10% of what they say it's going to be. Ideally, yes, get it from fish and food, but how often do people actually eat a substantial enough, especially if you're in a deficient state? Like you need to be getting more so of that thing and do it consistently enough. People just don't do that. And so I think supplementation. We should also be pulling down, our omega-6s at the same time and increasing the omega-3s, but, balance what we likely eat with, eating out and, restaurants. They're always going to have seed oils. You have to account for that as well.
That's why people get this is another one of those overwhelming ones, but if I had to tell, this is the primal model. If I had to tell people a couple things, it's seed oils, like just get rid of them out of your house, never use them, because when you go out, you won't have a choice. And everyone's going to get exposed to some. So that's your 10 or 20% when you're not in control of it. And my mom actually listened to me on that one, which was amazing, because parents never listen to their kids. But there's so much data on oxidized omega-6s causing just massive amounts of inflammation. And she started having something popping up. And I was like, I know you like baked goods, Mom. Just stop using sugar. Use literally any other sweetener that's real. Use something else and stop using canola oil, for the love of God. So she did. Like coconut oil came in. Like they're easy, cheap alternatives. They might taste slightly different, but if it reduces the amount of like systemic inflammation, most people are willing to make that trade. And you hit on a couple of the big ones that I like telling people, which is protein. Exactly like you said. If you're going to focus on something, fatty acids, because the gray matter of your brain is made up of omegas. So make sure your fats are good. Make sure you're getting enough protein, because every enzymatic reaction, your body is built off of aminos. If you don't take them in, your body will get them somehow, and it's just going to deaminate and strip your muscle tissue down. Like there is, everything you do requires protein. So get enough protein, fat, and then water, because those are the major structural ones. So your connective tissues, literally everything about your body is fat, protein, water. So those are the big ones I focus on. And then you can start arguing and get nitty gritty from there. But those are like, if you had to make some sweeping changes, those aren't bad to start with.
Love it, man. This has been great.
We went all over the place. Anything that we didn't touch on? I'm sure we're going to end up doing another one of these, because there's a lot of areas we can dive into.
Yeah, we get real deep and weird. I mean, I got a lot of controversial thoughts, and
I'm sure we agree on most of them.
I'm in this whole world of biological medicine, so there's a lot of very interesting things, and getting into different energies within different forms of supplementation. I think that's really when you understand those things. I think there's a lot of really interesting things, and there's been a couple like really just groundbreaking things that I've been using in practice that I've seen like a lot of success with. And, that has to do with an energetic development of different organ different organ systems. And that's been like a really critical thing for me to understand, like for example, one thing to give some context is like, I work with a lot of females who have some form of like hypothyroidism. And energetically that system develops between like 18 months and about 7 years old. And it's almost like every single time, part of their intake process is like, I'm talking to them from like the day they're born, like, tell me about like what childhood was like. And I don't let them gloss over it. And the people who have some sort of thyroid issue, I get something that happen. It doesn't have to be like a big T trauma, but some sort of adverse childhood experience happened between 18 months and 7 years old. Boom, parents divorced when I was 6 years old. Oh, I almost died when I was 5 years old. My brother passed away when I was 3. Like, every single time. And it's interesting. So there's so many people that are in this functional medicine realm and, are just treating the tests and like trying to balance, these, TPO antibodies and giving more selenium and minerals and things. And I think, there's a lot of other levels underneath this. And I think when you understand energetics, which I just faintly have a bare understanding of, it opens up this whole other world. I mean, I think you touched on it too, of like, I forget the researcher, the Japanese guy in water, and he would say positive words and freeze the water, negative words. Yep. And then, I mean, that has to do with not the words that we're saying, but energies, if I understand it correctly.
Information fields. Everything we do has and emits an information field, whether we are conscious of it or not. So there's entire practitioners who specialize in just that. And this crosses into the woo-woo realm, because the only reason it's woo-woo is because there's no there is now peer-reviewed, there's research, real scientific procedure. Just funding is always the major issue. So the energetics are becoming more interesting because they are so profound whenever you start looking at them. Like people have life changing. Well, this is Dispenza's work. This is anyone in the mindset realm, brainwave states. Like you're not playing with food there, and it transcends anything physical, where just by changing something about your energy, like you have a piezoelectric emitter inside you, that's your pineal gland. So just by changing something about your energy, people have these massive sweeping biochemical changes. They didn't change anything they were taking in. Their food stayed the same, their water stayed the same. But by changing the information fields they were interacting with and emitting, massive things happen. So I think the research is going to get real interesting in that world, because there are more people fascinated by it and studying it now, like you said.
And not just people, countries. I mean, 2016, Switzerland said, we see homeopathy on par with conventional medicine. That's big. I mean, Western Europe is so far ahead of our medical model, and I mean, preventative healthcare. I think that, we can really learn a lot from other countries. I mean, shit, like I think we spend 18 and 19% of our GDP on our healthcare costs, and we don't have healthcare statistics that exceed Cuba. I mean, our infant mortality rate is on par with Uzbekistan and Uruguay. Like I can keep going. I mean, like type 2 diabetes and the amount of money that we're spending there, I think it's like $55,000 per individual, when that's like, I'll put my tinfoil hat on, like we can completely wipe out type 2 diabetes with just changing our food or their food. Yes, it's complicated and there's emotions and blah, 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 but it can be done, and so what's the cost to, I think the last thing I'll say is like, I had a lot of issue with the whole pandemic, because I felt like it was this missed opportunity. When were people so damn motivated to do crazy fucking things, like wear 3 masks on their face in a car by themselves? Like people would do like incredible things. They would put the groceries outside and sterilize them. Like we were doing weird things. Man, couldn't we have taken that and funneled into a public health educational campaign and say, hey, here are some very great things that you can do? But there wasn't benevolence in this. It was power and money to gain. And again, I've got my tinfoil hat on and I'm oversimplifying things, but it was a massive missed opportunity. Think about how the opportunity cost that we just took on there, and we could have made the entire society, but no, we choose to suppress and subdue all these things. And like, no, you have to get the vaccine to be healthy. Yes, that's going to be one thing you can do for sure, but there's a lot of other things you can do that would also support or help that. And so I took a lot of issue with how that was being handled. You're not the only one. And I'm the minority. They shut down my business for, several times, like a lot of reasons, couldn't see my grandma for 2 years and she's almost 100 years old. Like, I mean, think about that. Like she almost died in solitude. Like it's not cool. Like it might be better just to die around friends and family.
Well, and there's a number of massive metabolic educators who are pointing out, because the studies are now coming out, like they they weren't for 2 years. Well, they were, but the studies were being suppressed for a while. But now the data on metabolism and risk for all-cause mortality, really, but specifically related to the last 3 years, is just pouring out. And it's not an I told you so thing. It's just, we should take this, right. This should be the most important thing, because this affects literally everything about your health. You have to live in less fear. Being metabolically healthy and taking control of those things will lead to better outcomes for almost everything. And the data on that is now in abundance. And like, you can just scroll Instagram through like high intensity health or any of model health shows, Sean Stevenson, Thomas DeLauer. There's a couple of big guys that just look at pure data and who got really pissed off because they were screaming about this the entire time. They're just like, the data is there regarding type 2 diabetes, regarding any of these metabolic markers and risk for, I mean, anything, especially. So people do have some direct control over their health. Genes play a role, but like epigenetics is a very interesting field where you almost have full control over everything, or you can minimize it all the way down.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, right. I'm glad you brought up metabolic health. I mean, that was the central theme of why people had issue with
Right.
COVID. I mean, and if you were to have some sort of public campaign that supported people's metabolic health, say you just got rid of the farm bill, which subsidizes corn, wheat, and
Right.
Soy, or you change that up. And I mean, I know that's a big thing, but now you would change the whole food system, and maybe, we could subsidize like produce and meat. Wow, that would be a novel idea. And say you did things like that, and not only are we decreasing the risk of people dying and ending up in the hospitals for coronavirus, well, shit, you just eliminated 100 million people maybe out of having type 2 diabetes. Like, I know this is a fantastical, like, world that I'm projecting, but like we could have made some pretty significant improvements with people if we really, really gathered around this. Like, I've never seen people mobilize like that. And
Right.
it was all for the greater good. We could have used that a different way.
You're not the only one to point out the amount of money that was dumped into things. Like, the amount of money that was printed could have been, by almost everyone's estimates, could have been used to like alleviate or get rid of poverty. Whether or not that would actually happen. But yeah, if you're talking about governments moving that fast and printing that much money with moving the needle on nothing, like, there are a bunch of other things that could have been done. But now I think at least people are more aware of the things that do move the needle for health, and just how to not live in a fear state and have more direct control over their health. So upsides to everything.
Yeah.
All right. Where can people find you on social media? And I will link everything down below, but just tell everyone where your protocols are. You have a bunch of good freemium, so if you want to shout out your socials and your websites.
Yeah, so our website is centralathlete.com. My Instagram is J.A. O'Brien, OBRIEN, the number 1. And those are going to be kind of the best places. We also have like a fantastic, if you're interested in exercise, go to our YouTube, Central Athlete. We've got, I think over 3,000 exercise demo videos. So we have the most comprehensive exercise video library database. And it's not just the videos. We also categorize the muscles, the planes of movement. Is an externally loaded movement? Is it a corrective exercise? And so it's a really great thing for anybody who's trying to, put together workouts for themselves or other people, because we have systems where you can actually stratify that information. Like, I want a single leg movement with dumbbells that is a sagittal plane movement, and you can get, boom, 86 different exercises out of the 3,000. So it's a great thing to create some novelty to training, or just help health coaches upgrade their prescriptions.
Yeah, that database is, I saw that last night. It is massive. That's the biggest one I've seen. And yeah, movement is so specific. So having something that comprehensive is a fantastic tool, and it's not going away, which is the nice part about building that. Is in perpetuity, there is a physical remedy for almost every movement. Like we mentioned lower cross syndrome and upper cross syndrome earlier, which is just, anterior pelvic tilt, shoulders head leaning forward, like that's part of my morning routine is I have both of those because of my poor posture. So I do things to correct those. So if anyone has questions, feel free to shoot any one of us a message and we'll go dig through that library and find, 2 corrective exercises that are easy that you can do with body weight every day and slowly improve your posture. Things like that just make a dramatic difference in your outlook and energy. And I'll stop ranting. Thank you very much for your time, Jesse. We'll end up doing this again because we have so many rabbit holes to go down.
Oh yeah, and I enjoyed it. This is fun.
Yeah,
Thank you, man.
likewise. Thanks, man.
Thanks for tuning into the podcast, everyone. I absolutely love that one. It's always apparent whenever you meet someone that you can just riff on with any subject that has the same curiosity and level of interest in optimizing human health through agriculture, through mindset, through all the different frameworks that's required to fundamentally instill holistic wellness in our eyes. We chatted about a lot during this podcast. You can find all the links for Jesse's coaching and his Austin, Texas based business down below. Find links about the water that we mentioned, find links about magnesium. And as always, we have coaching packages available going into the new year. We hope that you institute some of the habits that you've been meaning to this year. If you need professional help building that consistent long-term habit-based, running those automatic programs and slowly replacing things in your brain and in your body to become the best version of yourself, whatever that means to you, find all of the coaching information down below. And thanks so much for listening. Happy New Year.